I'm here with Joe Lample. He is the host of Growing a Greener World on PBS, also the Create channel. It's been rebroadcast about 10,000 times now. You just finished season 7?
Yeah. We're going into season 8 this year.
Syndicated in 39 countries?
Yes.
Okay. If you're not familiar with them and you want to see all the programs, you can go to growingagreenerworld.com, and all of the season's episodes are available online. Now, you're here at the Madison Garden Expo. You're going to do some talks, but also you've got a new ebook coming out all about composting.
Right. The complete guide to home composting. Basically everything you wanted to know but didn't ask, or did ask, plus things you didn't even know to ask, because there's so much to know about composting. But I have a new website relaunching in April also called joegardner.com. And to get ready for that, I was creating content. And one of the first articles is all about composting, right? So I wanted to keep my articles around 500 words. But when I was typing, I looked up from my session and I was already at 2,000 words. And I hadn't even scratched the surface. And I said, well, that's too long for an article or a blog post, but it's not long enough for like a really hearty, meaty thing. So I said, well, I'll just turn this into an ebook. In 15,000 words later, it's now 77 pages. It's a great ebook. But the thing about the ebook that I think I'm so excited about, I sent an email out to my list and I said, hey, what do you want to know about composting? And this was at like 5 in the morning one morning. Within an hour, I had over 100 replies. And then they kept coming and coming and coming. So by the end of it, it was close to 1,000. And I said, oh my gosh, people really want to know about this. So I literally read every email and responded to every person, said, hey, thanks for your input. I'm going to cover this. And I made note of what they asked for. And I made sure that when I was done with the book, I clicked off every thing I wrote down that people wanted to know. And it's in the book. And then some. So I'm pretty proud of it. I mean, it really should be a hardbound or a book you pay for, but we're giving it away.
Now, how can people sign up to get this? Because it's going to come out in about a week here, middle of February.
Right. I just got the final draft for approval, and so I just got to sign off on it, and it'll be ready to go. But all people have to do is go to joegardner.com, give us their first name and their email where we can give them the link to download the ebook, and it's really that easy. And on top of that, we have other resources that we give throughout the year too. So this is just the next one in line, but there are multiple gifts like that we just want to provide to our community.
Now, with this experience of the compost, do you feel that people just overcomplicated compost?
I do. In fact, one of the early chapters in the book, it's not rocket science. It's a simple 4-ingredient recipe. And that was the whole point of it. I started off the introduction of the book, I said, I've learned that over time, people don't compost because they either think it's too complicated or they give up before they give it a chance. And it's just, if they would understand it's only those 4 things and give it a chance, because you don't make compost in one day. It takes a few months, even in the best circumstances. If they'll just do that, I think you'll hook them. They'll be hooked for life.
And the list of things not to put on compost is much shorter than the things you can put on.
It's a small list.
But people say don't put dairy and meats or cheeses or bone. Is that strictly because it's not going to break down, or because of the rodents? I mean, if you had a pile in the back 40, could you throw all that in and just let her sit for a year and come back and it's compost?
Yeah, you could. It's the pathogens that as they break down, it's the pathogens in that sort of product, and it's also the attractant to the rodents. The reason why people have pest problems in their compost is typically because they have things that those pests, those rodents are attracted to. But they're not as attracted to vegetables and grass clippings and things like that. They're after the meat, right? So you keep that out of it, plus you keep the pathogenic issues away, and you don't have an issue.
Over the last year in gardening, what has been the biggest thing that you've learned that you've just blown your mind?
I love to say no matter how much you know about gardening, there's always more to learn. And so my biggest idol mentor people are still learning, just like I am and just like the newest gardeners are. But for me, this last year, about the last year and a half, we did a major installation at the garden farm where we film our show and where I live, of a lot of new trees and shrubs. And I put them in the fall, which is the best time to plant, as you know. And then it gives a chance for the roots to establish and everything like that. So I did that, and I kept up with the watering. But then over the following year, as we came into spring and then summer, so of 2016, we had very little rain, very, very little rain. We got into a drought condition, and we had high heat. And normally plants will establish in a matter of months if you get them set off in the right course. But in this case, because of the heat and the drought, the plants that normally would have established weren't establishing. And it required that I would go out there and water and water and water and water and water. I'm telling you, I mean, I didn't have the time, but I knew that if I didn't water them, I would still lose them. And in spite of the fact that I was diligent with all the extra watering, I still lost 15% of my shrubs and some trees. But I adapted. The thing about it is, if you're paying attention, you're going to learn a lot. But you're going to make mistakes, and a lot of those aren't going to be your fault. You know, Mother Nature is always in control. But if you can learn from those mistakes and learn the cause and effect, and then adapt to that, which is what I did in this case. I adapted some drip irrigation soaker hose systems on automatic timers that were really easy for me in a busy lifestyle and anybody, and it turned everything around. But for me, what I learned was it takes longer to establish trees and shrubs in the garden than you think it does, or that you've been told that it does during extreme conditions.
Now, I want to ask one more question because a lot of people I've seen this over the last year. They've dealt with poison compost, and you had this problem, and people don't know it exists. If you can just briefly tell the story to inform people of what to need to look for so they don't like ruin their garden as you did.
Well, first of all, it typically shows up from horse manure. So if you are using hay in your garden that has been consumed by horses, and of course it breaks down in the compost pile, which is what happened to me. You know, we have horses, they eat the hay that comes from the farmer that sprays his fields with an herbicide. It's a persistent herbicide. The farmers like it because they only have to spray it one time. It kills all the broadleaf weeds, but it doesn't harm the grass, which becomes the hay. So they'll harvest clean hay. We feed it to our horses. It doesn't break down, so it's safe for the animals to consume, which is why farmers like to use it. But the problem is because it doesn't break down, the herbicide is still effective as an herbicide, even in the composting situation.
Through the animal and all the way through. Yeah.
Months and months later, when it's broken down as beautiful black gold compost, that herbicide is still there at full strength. But you can't tell that. So you think you're supplementing your garden with organic manure, right? And you mix it in, which is what I did. And it's ironic because I warned people not to do this, and I still did it myself because it looked so good, and I talked myself into using it, and I did. And it didn't take a week. Once those new seedlings, those roots spread out and came in contact with the compost that was tainted, the plants just started wilting, and I knew right away. It's an instant. Once you know what to look for, it was instant.
Almost kind of looked like the plant wasn't getting water that it was needing. It just kind of wilted to nothing.
Shriveled, wilted, stunted growth, disfigured. There was a lot of symptoms to it, but you instantly know. And then the problem with it is you only have two choices. You can wait it out, which can take literally 3 or 4 years, as it did even with me, proactively, or you can dig it out and replace it. I had 30 cubic yards of soil. That's at least 3 large dump truck loads of soil. I didn't have the time or the money to change it out and buy it. So I waited it out, but I also proactively tried to do all that I could do as a human, which there's not much you can do. These are synthetic compounds that are designed not to break down. But if you expose them to UV light, air and water and heat, that means just turning your soil extra and exposing it.
Nature will kind of revert it back to natural.
It will accelerate the decomposition or the deactivation of the herbicides. So I knocked a year off of it.
Now, you can find this on growinggreenworld.com. What is the title of the show? Do you recall what the name of that is? Poison compost or...
Well, the topic, if you just went onto the website and typed in killer compost, that'll get there.
And I would encourage everybody to watch that because I know several people over the last year has dealt with this and didn't know what it was until after the fact.
Yeah.
So know where your source is coming from, know what it was, is basically know the whole cycle.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, if you really want to play it safe, just avoid using horse manure or ask your farmer if you can get to the source of where it was harvested. Ask them if they use that herbicide. It's got different trade names, but the active ingredient, there's a number of them, and the one down in Georgia is picloram that is the problem. But the other thing you can do is a bioassay test. So if you have a big pile of manure and you're curious as to know whether or not it's tainted, you can take some of that manure and mix it in with clean soil into a pot. And then on another pot, get what you know is clean soil, like if you went to a garden center and bought sterile soil. So you have 2 pots, one with sterile soil and one with half sterile soil and half of that compost. Mix it up. Put tomato seeds or bean seeds in the 50-50 pot and the same with a clean pot. And then just give it 4 weeks. See what happens, observe. If they're both clean, they'll both look good and healthy. But if the tainted one is truly tainted, you will know it because you'll see it in the seedlings. And if that's the case, stay away from that manure and run, don't walk, and get away from it.
Well, Joe, I greatly appreciate you taking time. Growing a Greener World is the website for the show, and your new website is?
JoeGardener.com.
And you can sign up for that free ebook. Free. It's free. You just got to sign up for it. A lot of great information. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joey.